I'm sure a lot of you guys remember the old ceremonial hunting tradition of eating the heart out of the first animal you kill. Meat from those organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. You can get those same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil. Find out more at heartandsoil.co. And remember, use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase.
Outdoor adventure won't wait for engine problems. Things like hard starts, rough performance, and lost fuel economy are often caused by fuel gum and varnish buildup. Seafoam can help your engine run better and last longer. You simply pour a can into your gas tank. Hunters and anglers rely on Seafoam to keep their engines running the way it should the entire season. So pick up a can of Seafoam today at your local auto parts store or visit seafoamworks.com to learn more.
Welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast, your home for deer hunting news, stories, and strategies. And now, your host, Mark Kenyon.
Welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast. I'm your host, Mark Kenyon, and this is episode number 107. Today on the show, we've got Tim Burnett, the host of the Solo Hunter TV show and an avid Western hunter. And we're talking Western whitetail hunting, self-filming, and much more. All right, welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast, brought to you by Sitka Gear. And today, as I just mentioned, we've got a great guest in Tim Burnett, who's going to join me to discuss all sorts of stuff, including Western whitetail hunting, advice for whitetail hunters heading out west for their first big game hunt, thoughts on the impact of social media on hunting, self-filming, and so much more. But before all of that, unlike most weeks, we will not be catching up with my co-host Dan Johnson because he's actually out of the office today, I believe, chasing his other passion of competitive dog grooming. So it's just me today and our guest, Tim. But before we get Tim on the line, we do have two quick housekeeping items to mention. First, if you haven't yet checked out our new 100% Wild podcast yet, this is the week to do it, as we just launched a really informative episode with Mark Drury and John Odell, diving deep into all sorts of things related to grunting and rattling and bleeding and basically everything you need to know to call to deer. I think most of you guys remember how awesome our Wired to Hunt podcast was with Mark Drury back last summer. So if you want more of that kind of top shelf advice, you need to check this one out. So be sure to download this new episode. I think it's episode number 5 of 100% Wild. And you can find that over at wiredtohunt.com, on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever it is that you like to get your podcast. Just search for 100% Wild. And please make sure to subscribe to that podcast and leave us a rating or review. That is a huge help. Speaking of that, if you haven't gotten a chance to do it yet, if you haven't been able to leave us a rating or review for the Wired to Hunt podcast, that would be hugely appreciated as well. Now, with all that said, we also need to thank our partners at Sitka Gear for making this podcast possible. As we do every week, we've got a Sitka story to share with you today, and I think you're really going to enjoy this one. Today we've got Jess Dalo from De Lorenzo Photography, and several years ago, she had one of those seasons that just grinds on you. You know, hunt after hunt comes and goes, and nothing seems to go right. So when Pennsylvania's final day of their late archery season arrived and had lousy weather, Jess was left with a tough decision to make.
And it was super miserable outside. It was raining and cold. And I'm sitting in my house, was kind of mulling over it and being bummed. And I decided I was just going to go out into the garage. I threw on my downpour gear. I grabbed my bow and just kind of headed out to a stand with no plan. And I couldn't think about the season ending with me just sitting at home, being a grump over it. So then I'm sitting in my stand and I'm just watching the rain. I'm still thinking and coming to terms with having a failed season. And then this group of does starts coming through. And a nice mature kind of doe just walks and she stops perfectly in my lane and almost looks at me saying I'm here. And I shot her and she went down right away, and it was like just a couple of split seconds. It wasn't like super exciting, but as I'm sitting there waiting to get down, I'm just like, I'm realizing that like this is why I love hunting, because shooting that doe, if I had had a super successful season and like had a big buck already and filled my tags, I never would have really remembered that hunt as something memorable. But for that being the high point in my season, it was just like, this is why I hunt. Like there was so much time put in prior and unsuccessful sits. I had been at full draw on a deer already and it didn't go as planned. And it was just a great reminder that that split second when you shoot a deer is not like, it makes up for all the time that you put in. And I learned so much that year. There was no big mount like that I'm looking at on the wall every time I remember it. It's just the experience and being in the woods, and you never kind of know how it's going to play out. And I think that's a huge factor that pulls us in every fall. Like that's why we get addicted, because you just never know. And when I get really frustrated when I'm sitting in my stand now, I kind of just always think back on that season, and it just reminds me to soak it all in and connect and have fun and just like remember that you never know what's going to happen. And it's like, that's the addictive factor for me.
I don't know about you, but I can definitely relate to that. Now, as just mentioned, she was wearing Sitka's downpour rain gear on that hunt. If you'd like to learn more about what other whitetail gear Sitka has to offer, visit sitkagear.com. And now, let's get our guest, Tim Burnett, on the line. All right, with me on the line now is Tim Burnett. Welcome to the show, Tim.
Hey, Mark, how are you doing?
I'm doing really well. How about you?
Good. It's another beautiful day.
It really is. Although I'm in Driggs, Idaho right now, and there are some serious thunderstorms rolling through right now. I'm not from this part of the country, so I'm used to these storms back in Michigan that just kind of appear over top of you, and then it's there for the rest of the day. But I feel like out west here, you see these storms coming for hours and hours, slowly building until they get to you. I don't know. There's visually a lot more exciting than what we have back at home. I don't know if you're just used to it being out west all the time, but I love the storms out here.
Yeah, it's hard to take the skies for granted because they are so beautiful out here in the West. It really is just nothing like. I lived in Oklahoma for about a year, and there's just nothing like the western skies and the skyline and everything.
Oh yeah, when they talk about like the big sky in Montana or really anywhere in the West, they aren't lying. There really is something to it.
It's true.
Yeah. So where are you right now?
So I'm in Reno, Nevada, sitting in my garage listening to a bunch of construction going on outside. So hopefully it doesn't interfere with your audio.
Oh, no problem at all. So far, so good. So I guess before we get too much further, Tim, for those who aren't familiar with you, can you kind of give us a little bit of background as to what you're doing today in the world of hunting and how you got to be there?
Yeah, so in the world of hunting, I'm just hunting. That's kind of been my MO from the very beginning. Is all I want to do is hunt and then document that and figure out some way to turn that into a career so that I can do a lot more of it. So, I'm just hunting like everybody else whenever I can get a chance. And currently, I produce and host Solo Hunter, which is on Outdoor Channel. We're just now turning in some of the episodes to the network for season 7. Which is kind of crazy to think about.
Wow.
And then just looking forward to this fall. I've already drawn some good tags and just looking forward to doing more of it.
Nice. So where are you hunting this fall?
So I'll be in Idaho and Montana, Utah, and then, we'll see where some of the other draws. I think there's a couple more late draws to come out. Actually, Montana just hit yesterday, maybe today. So I got to find out there. But all out here in the West. And then I did schedule a trip to go back to Oklahoma with my buddy Stacy Chester. We got a place that we like to go out there. So
nice. Now, how'd your season last year go?
Last year was rough. It was super. Yeah, I put a lot of effort into it. I wanted to take the production value of the show. For those of you that aren't familiar with Solo Hunter, that have lived in a cave for the last 7 years, we self-film the entire show. There's no production crew, no cameraman, no safety outlet, any of that kind of thing. Mark's very familiar with that type of a format, but we're not necessarily doing it. It's out west. It's western hunting. It's big game, so there's a lot of moving and hiking going on, and not not just in a tree stand or just in a ground blind. We kind of try to have some diversity with it. So it's tough. So I put a lot of pressure on myself to film well and hunt well. And I did both extremely well, but I forgot to kill.
That's one important part, I suppose, right?
Yeah, I guess. Unfortunately, it's all part of it. But I've tried to build the show around everything, in addition to the killing. So so that it's not everything. It's not the main point.
So how did the show come about? I mean, was it simply the fact that you were just self-filming for yourself and eventually realized maybe people would want to see this? Or did you come into it and had this idea, like, I'm going to make this a show and a business? How did that all begin?
So we'll keep the show separate from the business because that's all developed over time. As far as the show goes, when I started in television, actually it's kind of funny. My old partner called me today. When I first started, I partnered up with Jeff Danker of Buck Ventures. And he kind of introduced me into the world of hunting television, and we had a relationship for a couple of years. Did Buck Ventures for a couple of years, and then I got tired of living in Oklahoma and moved back out west. So, how Solo Hunter came about was I had the taste for outdoor television and filming my hunts ever since I was a kid. After coming back west after that stint in Oklahoma, I was just posting a bunch of my videos because I was filming my hunts solo. I didn't have a cameraman or anything. And a group of guys out of Missouri, Jefferson City, Missouri. In fact, I think they still have a show on Pursuit Channel. It's not Back Outdoors now. It's Boondock Boys. So at the time, they were Back Outdoors, and they contacted me and said, "Hey, man, we like your videos. Would you be interested in producing our show? We want to go on Sportsman Channel." So, long story short, I started producing and just doing the editing and the post-production for their show. And they had their first season on Sportsman Channel. They ended up losing some funding midway through the third quarter. And when they pulled out on that left an opening with the network, with Sportsman Channel, because I was carrying the contract. So that's where the business side comes in. I was carrying the contract with the networks because of my connections there, and I got left holding the bag, so I was on the hook for the network fees, and it was now or never. It was time to take the concept of Solo Hunter and put it to the test. And so I quick edited an episode together and submitted it to the network, and it went to air the following week, and it was like nothing anyone really had seen at the time, I guess. So,
and that first episode, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't that an Idaho whitetail hunt?
Yeah, it was that I had filmed. I actually filmed it that year. So this is in September. So if people aren't familiar with the way the quarters work, September is kind of the tail end of the third quarter, which is generally when all the new shows go to air. So I had just barely filmed that episode, and so I did some flashback footage of the year before when I filmed some stuff and just cut it together as quick as I could. And then at that point, it was a bum rush, man. It was like, where can I get some more footage? Because the network wanted more, and just kind of took off.
And here you are today, huh?
Still in the same spot. Still the network wants more, and I still have to keep feeding them more. So.
Like you said, though, at least you get to keep on hunting, and this is a good way to help make that happen.
Exactly. There's a lot of different ways. In fact, that's one of the things that I did last year. I've produced and hosted a project for G5 and Prime Archery. We kind of did 4 episodes on featuring some professionals within the archery industry. And there's a lot of different career paths that a guy could take if he wants to be in the outdoors. And the video and the hunting television is just one of them. I mean, you've carved out a great niche with what you do with the podcast and the blog and the writing and the photography and all that. I mean, you've carved out your niche, and other people have carved out theirs. So there's really no guaranteed or no specific path that a person should take. There's a lot of different avenues.
Right. I've always thought it just kind of comes down to figuring out where that intersection of your passion and your skill set, where that intersection is, and that might be where you can then try to, like you said, carve out that niche. But trying to force something based on what you see someone else on TV doing or what so-and-so does, that's not always the right way to go about it. But like you said, there's so many different options. It comes down to being passionate about it and just willing to put in a lot of work, I think, right?
Yeah, you really got to focus on a lot of different things, but I think the number one thing is focus on what you're good at. You know, you might have a passion. A guy might have a passion for being on TV or for whitetails, for instance, or just hunting. But if you're not good at it, maybe you ought to focus on, you know, something else. You know, who knows? So you got to be good at what you do, I think.
Yeah, very true.
Passion's important, but if you're not good, people don't notice passion as much.
Very true. And there's a lot of people gunning for that type of gig or that type of opportunity, so you really need to find a way to stand out.
It's the most visual, you know, and it's the most appealing to everyone. But I think that's another thing that a lot of people don't necessarily realize is if you can capitalize and focus on the business side of it, or the back end of it, I call it. That's really where the deals are made, and that's where things happen. You know, where the relationships are struck. The television side of the video side of it, I guess, or the end use side of it, isn't the nuts and bolts of it. That's for sure.
Yeah. Like you said, kind of the glamorous end of things, but not. There's a whole lot else going behind the scenes. That's for sure.
Sure.
So going back to something you mentioned just a second ago, that first episode that you put together for Solo Hunter was an Idaho whitetail hunt. And when I saw that some time ago, I don't remember, I think it was on your YouTube channel maybe, and that was one of the things that, you know, reminded me that, yeah, Tim does do some whitetail hunts. I've seen you do some stuff in Oklahoma, Idaho, I think maybe Wyoming or Montana, or maybe that was Remy. But, you know, how often do you whitetail hunt? Is that a pretty rare thing, or have you been doing that a long time?
You know, I've killed more whitetails than I have any other animal combined. I didn't start whitetail hunting until I met Jeff, you know, so 2004 or 5 was when I killed my first whitetail out in Oklahoma, and then I've been chasing them ever since. You know, the last couple of years last 2 years I've kind of tailed it off a little bit, but between 2004 and last year, I've killed a good buck with my bow every year, and a lot of years multiple bucks.
Nice. So where all have you whitetail hunted?
Mostly Oklahoma. I've been to Illinois. I've been to Missouri. Out east, let's see. You know, that's pretty well it. If I can't think of any other place I've hunted in the Midwest, and then of course Idaho and Montana.
Nice. Like I mentioned earlier, I think it was before we were on air, I've got my first Western whitetail hunt coming up in Montana, so I'm pretty excited about that, and was definitely hoping to pick your brain a little bit about what is different, you know, in this part of the country versus maybe the Midwest or the East Coast. And I don't know, you know, given your experience in those different places, some of those Midwestern states, Oklahoma, and then the farther western Rocky Mountain states, is there anything that stands out to you as pretty starkly different?
The animals are no different. You know, they still got to eat. They still want to breed. They still got to survive. You know, and the dates might change a little bit, but you're still talking November. You know, and that. So the animals aren't necessarily any different, but their terrain is really what gets you. And you know, the things that they don't have to deal with out in the Midwest, like thermals and wind change, and you know, because of the mountain range and all that kind of thing, it just makes it a little bit more difficult. And a lot of when you talk about public land whitetail hunting out in the West, you're talking big timber too. So it's not necessarily broken up into shelter belts and crops and, you know, river bottoms. A lot of it is just big mountains that's heavily wooded, and you just got to figure things out. There's obviously exceptions in different types of terrain. You know, in Montana, there's tons of river bottom, and if you've got the ability to hunt, you know, get access to the river, then great. But otherwise, you're up on the mountain with the rest of us.
Gosh, I mean, that seems like that is so far and away different than what a lot of us in the Midwest or different parts of the country are used to, where it's a lot of ag and then these smaller sections of cover, and you can kind of figure out a pretty standard bed to feed pattern of what these deer do. How do you go about figuring out what a whitetail is doing in that type of area?
Same thing, man. You got to figure out what they're eating at that time. You know, you got to figure out. Every season's different. You know, when I talk to people that don't hunt or are interested in hunting, they're like, "Well, you bow hunt, but gun hunting must be easy." Well, no, gun hunting is just as hard because you're hunting in October, usually when it sucks to hunt. You know, so everything changes depending on the area and the time of year. You know. So it's just it all varies. And really, at the end of the day, you got to figure out, okay, when is the hunting season? Where do I have access to? What do I got to do to get an animal killed?
Yeah. So let's talk early season. Selfishly, because I'm doing an early season Western hunt. So
Truth comes out.
Yeah.
Truth comes podcast for selfish reasons. Right?
Exactly. So early season, I've done obviously a ton of whitetail hunting, but I've never hunted that first week of September before for whitetails, but that's what I'll be doing in Montana. Have you done some whitetail hunting early September?
Yeah, most of the bucks I've killed in Idaho have been before September 6th. So that's I love hunting mule deer in the velvet. I love hunting whitetail in the velvet, and that's really kind of the tail end of when they're starting to strip and all that. But it's to me, man, that's the best time to kill a big buck is when he's the most vulnerable, and that's in my experience outside of the rut. It's when they're in the velvet.
Yeah. So why do you say that?
You know, they're generally that first part of September is tough because it just depends. You know, if they're still in velvet and they're still in their bachelor herds and they haven't got too cranky yet, and the bucks start to shed, they're still in their food to bed pattern. You know, late evenings, early mornings, and they're pretty lazy. You know, they're not traveling great distances because it's still fairly warm. But once that velvet comes off, they start to change. You know, you hear it all the time. They become a different animal. The testosterone starts to flow. They start scrapping with each other. They're not hanging out together nearly as much out here in the West once they start shedding. You know, it's a little different in the places I've hunted in Oklahoma. You'll see the bucks running together quite a bit through October. You know, through the middle to the end of October, they're running together. But once they start getting on each other's nerves, they're just a different animal.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm curious, when you're starting a hunt like that, if let's say you show up in the area where you're gonna hunt, and maybe it's not like right where you live, you don't know these deer, you know, inside and out. You're trying to figure it out at that time of the year. My assumption is that it's kind of a start slow, observe for a while, and then make a move. Is that true to form for you, or how do you begin a hunt like that? Do you just dive in, or do you wait and observe?
You know, if I'm new to an area or new to a specific place, I'll spend as much time as I need observing. You know, and just closing in, because if you just dive in, you don't know where you're diving into. You might dive into the wrong spot. You know, if you can sit back and find a vantage point, you know, out west there's no shortage of vantage points generally, depending on where you're hunting. But I guess I'm kind of a passive aggressivist. I like to be very passive at first, but if the right opportunity comes, I'm going to dive in, you know, and be really aggressive. So, but as far as for whitetails go, like say that place up in Idaho, for instance, when I first started hunting that area, you know, I spent 2 or 3 days just glassing from across the canyon. I mean, we're talking a mile away or more. Glassing, trying to see where the bucks were coming out and that type of thing. And then spent another couple of days before I got real aggressive with stand placement, sitting up on the field edge, you know, up in the crops, watching these bucks come out to see where they would come out. And then it wasn't until like the 6th or 7th day that I was there that I actually moved in with a tree stand and killed a buck on that first night.
So how do you know when to make that move for the kill? Is it simply that you've seen a buck do something enough times, or is it more, I don't know, how do you make that decision to finally go in?
I think that time of year, if you see a buck do something once, he's done it before. You know, a buck doesn't travel. I mean, whitetail guys know a buck is where he is for a reason. He's not anywhere ever by accident unless he's been, well, even when he's chased there, he's not there by accident. So they're there for a reason. So if he's traveling and it's late August or first part of September, and I can see him, you know, working this field edge and moving into the beans or whatever he might be doing, He's been there before. He's comfortable there. He's probably going to do it again. Might not be the next night, might not be the next week, but he's probably going to be there again.
Yeah. When you're going in to make that setup, how often are you doing a lot of ground hunting from ground blinds, or is it always using a tree stand or spot and stalk, or what are you doing when it comes to whitetails from a positioning standpoint?
I personally like to be in a tree. I mean, whitetails are made to be killed out of a tree. Kind of like coyotes are made to be killed with a rifle, and turkeys are made to be smacked with a shotgun. That's just the way I see whitetails. I mean, I've had some great encounters and great things from the ground, but there's nothing like doing your homework and scouting the deer and finding them and actually picking the right spot to be in that you can ambush them. It's like you tricked them in a way, and then you're in that stand. I mean, a lot of Western guys look at it and it's like, well, that's boring hunting, man. You're just sitting in a tree stand. Well, not if you were the guy that figured out that that's where that tree stand needed to be. If your outfitter put that stand there, yeah, hunting out of a stand sucks. But if you can spend 4 or 5 days hunting the area and patterning these deer, then it's stinking awesome. Yeah. I mean, there's no better adrenaline rush than that. Just wondering if that buck's going to come out of that little pocket of willows, and then when he does, watching him just shake and strut on in right underneath you while you got 3.5 minutes for your adrenaline to go crazy. I mean, it's freaking awesome. I love it.
Oh yeah, when they actually finally do, follow the script that you laid out. The few times that it works out, it's pretty special feeling. That's for sure. Is there any, I don't know, is there a standard way you like to go about setting your tree stands? Are you a guy who likes to be really high, or are you just going where the best cover is? Or is it, I'm curious to hear about what you're thinking about when you go setting up a stand in a position like that.
I set up my stand where the deer is going to be. I don't care if it's in a 9-foot cedar or a 30-foot sycamore. If the deer are moving through there, I will find some way to have a stand there or to be in that spot. I don't really care. I mean, I've killed deer out of, like I say, literally, I could reach up and put my hand on the platform of the tree stand,
Nice.
Out of the tree in Oklahoma. I've killed them out of the ground, but I've also, like that spot in Idaho, it's such a steep angle, but at one side you're 15 feet from the ground, but on the back side of the tree you're 30. Man, it just depends.
Yeah, you're getting up there, and so it sounds like with the way you're hunting.
Disclaimer here too, I am by no means a whitetail god. Right. I mean, not the leading authority on whitetail deer. I just like to hunt, and I figured out a way to kill a few of them. That's about it.
That's about the best you can ask for from all of us, I'd say. What kind of stand setups are you using? I mean, if you're going in, it sounds like, observing this deer for a while and then making a move with stands, you're probably using some kind of portable setup or climber. What do you do from a stand standpoint?
Lock on. You gotta remember, a lot of these places I've already hiked into a couple of miles, sometimes. So just a climber stand that's super lightweight, super small. That enables you also to get into smaller trees. And, anytime you throw in the filming aspect of it too, that's a whole different beast in itself. If a guy could just go in on his own and kill, you could get away with very minimal trimming and, get in places that you can't get into with the camera.
Mm-hmm.
Or a cameraman, for that matter.
Right. So when you're doing these mobile setups, are you like a middle of the day guy when you like to make your moves? Or some guys that like to go in after dark and hang a new stand? When are you usually making your move to put up a new stand and get situated?
Also, remember, you're talking early season, so midday is always going to be, always going to be a little bit more practical. Midday, early afternoon. A lot of times these bucks will get into a bed, by 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning. Well, they might get up and stretch their legs and go for a drink at noon too. So you got to be careful. But generally, I'm hanging them either, 12, 1 o'clock, or I'm going to go in and hang it at 4 o'clock and stay there.
Yeah.
Go ahead and hunt it.
So speaking of when you're hanging your stands and stuff like that, and about that midday time period, kind of a thing that we talk a lot about is hunting mornings at certain times of the year. A lot of us in the Midwest, or at least myself, I'm pretty hesitant about hunting mornings early in October during that kind of the early season for us is early October. Is that something that you're thinking about too in early September, about the challenges of trying to hunt in the morning and maybe focusing just on the evening, or do you hunt both?
Depends on the area. If you understand your food source and the destination fields where those deer are going to be, and if you feel like you can have enough time to get into a stand set, then mornings are stinking awesome. You see guys like Greg Miller and David Blanton killing deer in the mornings all the time. I've killed deer in the morning, so it depends on where the likelihood that those deer are going to be in the mornings. Because if you're not hunting the mornings that time of year and you're only hunting evenings, those are some long days, and you especially if you're traveling from out east or anything there, you've just wasted half of your trip, half of your vacation time to hunt half days. I mean, you'll figure out a way. If you want to hunt, you'll figure out a way to get in there, whether you're hiking in, going in at midnight and sitting for 6 hours in the dark. That's up to you. Depends on how much you want to kill a deer.
Yeah.
That spot where I've killed most of my deer in Idaho, I know those deer are going to go up into those crops and they're going to crest over the top and drop down into the destination pocket, so I can walk in just 30, 40 minutes before dark, knowing that they're not going to come up out of that other draw until I'm already in the stand.
Right. Now, what about these situations like the river bottom type habitat, like we were talking about in places like Montana and a lot of other places out west? It seems like, they're probably bedding in that habitat around the river, right, and then moving up to the crops above. Is that right? Or how are they using that from a bedding versus feeding area?
Yeah, so it can be. You'll see a lot of times in Montana or Idaho on the alfalfa that's right along the river, those deer will bed right in the alfalfa. So unless they're bumped, and have a reason to have their pattern altered, there's no reason for them to go into the wood line and bed. They can bed wherever they want. So that's where your scouting's got to come into play. You got to watch and see, crap, are they going to bed right next to that pivot every time so that it's nice and cool and they get water whenever they want? They can see danger coming from miles away, or are they going to work into that wood line and lay down right in the CRP right on the edge, or are they go a little deeper to find a little cedar pocket? You don't know. That's the thing, is they're stinking animals, man. They're going to do whatever they want whenever they want. But the other thing to remember is if you see a buck, especially a big mature buck somewhere, he's there for a reason. So you got to figure out why. Why was he in this spot? Why was he rounding this bend on that river instead of just walking up over the gravel bar into the field? Well, it's because he can scent check 3/4 of the field by just working around that gravel bar because the way the winds are going or something. He's there for a reason, and he knows that travel corridor is safe. And so that's where early season, when you can actually see them on the hoof, you've got a huge advantage over October or early November, when you may not have laid eyes on them other than just trail cameras.
Yeah. Speaking of trail cameras, is that a big part of your strategy usually?
No, not generally. It is in Oklahoma where, where you've got a property, you've got boundaries, you've got your area, and you've got to figure out those deer and pattern those deer. So cameras are a lot more important to me there. Out west, in the spot like that spot in Idaho, I have those deer figured out so well, and I still put out cameras, to kind of see what's there. But if I'm going to a new area or something, I generally am traveling there, and I'm limited on time, and so I'll spend that time scouting, and if I can throw out a camera, I will. But I don't put a lot of weight into it because I may or may not have any connection to that spot. I might not be going back, or I might have just happened onto it randomly.
Right. You got a short amount of time to utilize those pictures, so it doesn't always end up panning out that's worth probably the time, right?
Yeah, if I'm going into Montana to somewhere and I bust in there and start hanging cameras where I think the travel corridor would be, I feel like unless you have the time or are going to be hunting that area for years on end, or multiple years or whatever, then cameras make sense. But if you've got 1 week and you're on vacation from, Albany, New York, and you're in Montana on public land, just get in there and hunt, man. Don't waste your vacation time hanging cameras. Find the deer and hunt, because, I don't know. That's my opinion.
For a guy from Albany, New York, like you said, or somewhere like that, do you think a whitetail trip out west is worth it? I mean, is there something special? Like, should somebody experience a western whitetail hunt versus anywhere else?
Heck yeah. Just like a Western guy needs to experience a Midwestern hunt or an Eastern hunt. You know, I mean, if you are an advocate for hunting, why would you limit yourself to only hunting elk and mule deer out here in the West? You know, I mean, if you really want to experience for yourself what whitetail hunting is, rather than just, you know, talking smack about whitetail hunters in the bar and how tree stand hunters are lazy and don't know how to hunt, they're not real hunters. Go out there and do it for your damn self and figure it out, man. You'll figure out that if you're actually hunting those animals and not just paying a fee to go with an outfitter to sit in a stand that his guy hung 6 years ago and it worked for one guy 6 years ago, so it's going to work for you this year, then that's not hunting. You know, that's a different type of a hunt. It's for different people. But if you're a hunter and you want to hunt, you know, you got to experience what we have to offer here in America, man. There's some good stuff.
Yeah. I've really come to enjoy the different types of terrain, too, that offer these different challenges and just different experiences, you know, from hunting where I live here in Michigan to then going out to an Iowa or Nebraska. And now I'm excited to take it, you know, a little step further to see, you know, a very different landscape in Montana. And I feel like there's something to be said about just experiencing those different types of hunts and everything that goes with it. You know, it may not be the most hyped place compared to Iowa or Kansas where the you know, quote unquote giants live, but I think just having a diverse set of experiences kind of rounds you out as a hunter, and I think just is a lot of fun too, don't you think?
It can, you know, it's all up to the individual. You know, I'm a huge believer that a guy's got to do what he is passionate about, what he wants to do. You know, don't feel forced to hunt the way other people hunt just because other people are having success. You know, I mean, if you're not gonna have, you know, like my buddy Jeff that I was just talking about, Jeff Dinker, he has no desire to go up and hike around the high country at 13,000 feet and chase a mule deer. Just not fun to him, you know. But if that's not fun to you, don't do it, you know. So it's all, that's the beautiful thing about hunting is it's an individual sport, you know, or it's an individual lifestyle, an individual activity, and you got to do it to whatever's going to make you happy, you know.
Yeah. So what makes you happy hunting? What's your favorite hunt? What's your favorite type of species to hunt in place?
You know, velvet mule deer in August. It's really kind of velvet mule deer in August, and then rolling into elk in September. I mean, that is hunting for me. You know, that's kind of where it's at. But I like to experience new things too. You know. Yeah.
Any certain state that is your home state, Nevada, your favorite spot for that type of velvet hunt, or whereabouts?
Yeah, Nevada for mule deer, definitely, because the hunts start August 10th. They used to start August 1st. But August 10th, you can roll in and find those bucks in about as vulnerable state as they'll ever be, and get in and hunt them. The difficulty, the challenge is getting the tag, you know. And then elk in Idaho, just because that's where I grew up. That's home.
Nice. So last year, me and my co-host, who's usually on the show with me, we were planning a early season high country mule deer hunt in Idaho, and just because of some funky things going on, we had to change our plans. But going into that, you know, we were trying to figure out all sorts of stuff about how to do a hunt like that. That's nothing either one of us have ever done. I've done some elk hunting, but not that kind of early season any kind of mule deer hunt really. What is it about that type of hunt that you like so much? I guess I'm curious about first.
Well, that's what I grew up doing, you know. I mean, I lived out in an area that's about as wild as it possibly gets, and we grew up going up to those high mountain lakes and fishing and seeing all these big deer, you know, running around. So it's only natural to want to go back. But you can't beat, you know, hiking in 6, 7, 8 miles into the high country and spending time up in the high alpine watching deer and elk and mountain goats and bighorn sheep. I mean, that's what Western hunting is.
Yeah, it sure seems to put yourself in a position to see some incredible places and animals, and just, I mean, probably a tremendous challenge, but worthwhile, I bet.
Yeah. I mean, if you're into that kind of thing, and like I say, you gotta. Most of the guys that have that are hunters and that want to explore and do those things will just eat it up. They would love getting up into new country, and I mean, you would love it getting up high and just figuring things out,
So what's a hunt like that look like? Are you just figuring out a basin you want to get into, getting up high and glassing a lot until you find the deer you're after and then making a move? Or do you start low and glass up? How does that kind of pan out?
So it just depends on the type of hunt that it is, or where it's at, So if you're specifically talking about, say, a mule deer hunt the first week of September, high country mule deer hunt, yeah, you're going to get up into those high basins, find where the water source is and the food source at that time, and get up as high as you can and do as much scouting as you can on Google Earth and just looking at the area, figuring it out. Once you experience and experience is the greatest teacher. When you're up there with those animals year in and year out, you kind of figure out where they're going to be, whether it's a mountain range in Idaho or a mountain range in Utah. The habits are going to be very similar. You're going to look for those pockets. You're going to look for the bitter brush. You're going to look for those things that experience has taught you, that the places that those deer like to be. That's really kind of how high mountain hunting is. There's no guarantees and nothing is the same.
Yeah. Can you elaborate a little bit about what those types of areas look like? I mean, in my situation last summer, I spent a lot of time on Google Earth looking at these mountain ranges and, taking things I've read and trying to apply it to this aerial I'm looking at and saying, okay, I see this pocket here and this, but it's kind of hard to translate that into what it's actually like on the ground. What does good mule deer habitat look like in the high country?
It could be wide open, just tundra looking stuff right up in the top of the shale. We watched when my brothers and I growing up, we watched one buck that would basically live in the shale, and then he would work his way around and park his butt under one little lone sage tree. I can't even remember what the heck the tree was, like out in the middle of nothing. And he just spent his life doing that, but you couldn't kill him because you couldn't approach him. So he obviously had figured that out. So where I hunt a lot in Idaho, it is a little bit more open. It's not as dense as what you might find in Montana, the high country of Montana, and some of those areas that are heavily wooded. So it just depends on the area. I always look for some open basins, high basins, a lot of water, a lot of feed, and there's generally going to be deer in there, so.
Is it?
I'm the worst teacher because I'm just like a guy that wants to go out and hunt, and I've been doing it since I was 10, 12 years old. So to try to explain what the terrain looks like, because the terrain on one side of the mountain is going to be entirely different to the other side,
That's
just
so true. I'm asking you impossible questions, but
nah.
I'm enjoying what I can take from this. I mean, there's so much. What I love about hunting new places, whether it's a western whitetail hunt or a mule deer hunt or elk hunts or whatever, I love that process of discovery, like that process of trying to figure it all out. And even in just a whitetail hunt in a new place, just trying to figure out a new property like we were talking about. I mean, that's kind of that chess match that you mentioned that's so cool when you can slowly start to put the pieces together, figure out one thing today and another thing tomorrow, and keep on adjusting, whether it be a tree stand or whether it's where you're glassing. It's pretty cool when you can slowly accrue all that information, right? And then finally see it pay off in some kind of way. That's for me what gets me so fired up.
Yeah, here's the thing. If you're in a decent area that holds animals, you're going to find animals where you're hunting. So if you're hunting the low foothills, you're going to find animals in the low foothills out west, I guarantee it. Are they going to be exactly what you want? Maybe, maybe not, but you're going to figure out how to hunt them there. You might take that same exact mountain range and go up to the top. You're probably going to find deer up at the top too, and they're going to be acting, the same as those down the bottom. It's just the terrain's a little bit different. Yeah. So it's just you got to adapt to the area where you're at. You don't necessarily have to adapt to the species as much because, like I say, animals want to eat, drink, breed, and be merry, and survive.
Very true. So for a whitetail guy, let's say, that's listening right now that lives in the East Coast or South or the Midwest or something like that, that wants to go out for their first Western hunt, what would you recommend as far as species, location, anything like that, for like a first timer going west? What do you think would be a good first time trip?
You talking a do-it-yourself guy or a guy that's looking to have some help? You know?
I'm interested in DIY. I think most of our guys are DIY.
Yeah, so you figure out where you can obtain a tag. You know, are you going to have to put in for a draw? Are you going to be able to go to a state that you can buy it over the counter? You know, so you got to figure that out. Once you narrow that down and say, okay, I'm just going to, I don't want to start building points. Excuse me. You figure that out and you say, okay, well, I need to have the flexibility to buy a tag over the counter. So that narrows you down to Idaho, you know, or wherever. Once you get that figured out, you say, okay, which area, you know, have you heard that is good hunting, or which areas are the tags good for? You figure out your area, and then you pull up Google Earth and just go to scouting. You know, spend hours and hours just looking at the maps, figuring out where water may be. You know, if that time of year, is there going to be snowpack in there? I mean, are you going to? So you just kind of do all your scouting, pre-scouting, and everything with Google Earth, and that's the beautiful thing, I guess, about social media. And the beautiful and bad thing is there's somebody out there that knows something about almost every area, and somebody out there that's willing to talk about every area. So there's a lot of networking going on and networking opportunities to get more information.
Yeah. Do you have a hard time with that? Do you have a lot of people reach out to you saying, where are you hunting in that episode? Or where should I go specifically for this trip or that trip? Is that something you have to deal with a lot?
Yeah, and I think a lot of that comes from the younger crowd that just really haven't figured out the ethics behind social media yet, you know, or just value of someone's time in general. So a lot of that comes from kids, and so, you know, you kind of feel that out and decide if you want to take the time to help them out a little bit, or if you just ignore it, you know. And I hate to say that I ignore things, but there's doing what I do. It's the questions and comments are not in short supply. Let's put it that way. So you gotta, you know, I pride myself on responding to as many questions as I possibly can, and I'm sure I don't get nearly as many as a lot of guys do. But at the end of the day, we're all on the same team, and I want to see someone succeed. But that's when I get those questions, that more times than not, it's, you know, teenager or, you know, a younger kid that just hasn't quite, you know, figured out the ethics, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Right.
They don't know how to ask. They think, you know, so I don't know.
Yeah. So one more thing for the first timer. Is there a species that you think is the best first time Western hunt species? Is elk the way to go the first time for most guys? If you had to give a generic answer, or I don't know, what do you think is the best beginner Western animal to go for?
It depends on how adventurous the beginner is, you know. I mean, if you're looking to just have an experience of a lifetime right out of the gate, go elk hunting. In middle of September, it doesn't get any better. Even if you don't lay eyes on a single animal, the sounds that you're going to hear and the places that you're going to get into will be enough of an adventure for your first time that you'll be addicted and want to go back year after year.
So yeah, I 100% agree from my experiences chasing elk. Does that ever get old? Because this will be my 4th year, I think, coming up elk hunting, and so far it hasn't gotten old for me. But for you, who's grown up with it, is it still as good as it was in the beginning?
Yeah, I'll still spend 3 weeks chasing elk. I mean, that's the beauty of, you know, I guess the approach that I take to hunting. Yeah, it's my job now, or it's a big part of my job now. But I've always taken the approach to hunting just like I would if I was, you know, a school teacher. I still want to just enjoy the wild, and I want to experience the animals as much as I can. So I feel like my mentality isn't much different than it would be otherwise.
Interesting. Yeah, it's there really is something to be said about just being out there and soaking it all in. And I wonder, you know, for me, one of the challenges I've kind of gone through, you know, from just being a hunter and then eventually starting to film my hunts and worrying about trying to capture on film and do all the other things that go into it, it's sometimes there was a kind of a level of like burnout where I was just not enjoying the hunt as much as I should have been because I was too worried about the production of something or producing, quote unquote, trying to get whatever it was I was trying to get. Have you ever felt that? Has that ever been something you've had to deal with?
Yeah, that's our fault. That's our choice. We've chosen to, in order to have the careers that we have, we've chosen that handicap, in a lot of ways. But I think you got to remember too is the majority of the guys that are listening to this podcast, or the majority of hunters out there in the country, they're not screwing around with cameras because they're smarter than we are.
Yeah.
If you almost have to, and that's one of the things that I've kind of learned over the years with solo hunter is there's the following or the fan base that are hunters that are into the hunting part of it, and then there's the fan base and the following that's addicted to the filming side of it too. So I'm just assuming, in this conversation that these guys are just wanting to go out and hunt and experience hunting. They're not out there to necessarily, document their hunt on camera and film it and all that. Because if you're wanting to come out west for the first time and film this awesome self-filmed hunt, solo hunt, man, you're in for a beast of a challenge right there. It's different than self-filming a hunt out of a tree stand, I can promise you.
Yeah.
So that's where guys like you and I have to kind of keep that separation, or that not everybody's out there to film, but a lot of our specific fan base are out there to film.
Yeah. So for those guys, because I don't know what you've seen, but I definitely think over the years I've seen more and more hunters want to pick up filming, not for necessarily a show or something, but just they want to have that footage for themselves to look back at or to show their friends or maybe to start their own thing. For those types of people, I don't know, do you have any advice for that type of person who wants to get started self-filming? What do you tell people that want to get started with that kind of thing?
To do it, man. I mean, if that's what you want to do, then figure out. You have to have an end goal in mind, and not necessarily end goal as in I want to be a TV guy, or I want to produce a DVD, or I want to this. Have an end goal with what your hunt looks like when you get home. What do you want that video production to look like? And then that's how you kind of work backwards and go into it that way. Because if you just say, I'm just going to film my hunt, and you don't have a format or a platform to showcase that format, then you're going to go out there, see a huge bull elk go over the ridge, and that camera's staying in the truck, and you're just going to go and hunt. You have to have, if you're going to make that commitment to film it with a purpose and with an end result in mind, because otherwise you're just going to have a bunch of footage that's going to frustrate you. Yeah. And probably an empty truck bed.
Exactly. What's your self-filming setup look like, if you're willing to share that?
No, you bet. I get that question, honestly, probably about 3 or 4 times a day on the various social media platforms and emails. I need to just do a video, but it's hard because I only have one video camera. So for me to do a video of my camera equipment is kind of counterproductive. I can't do it.
It's a little tricky.
It's a little tricky because, my wife's like, well, why don't you just buy another camera? I don't know. I just have never done it. I need to do it, whether I borrow Remy's camera or whatever. But I personally use a DSLR camera, and I have one GoPro, and that's basically it. Every once in a while, I'll haul a second GoPro for my head cam or helmet cam, but I've kind of gotten away from that a little bit too. So mostly just with a DSLR and a GoPro, and I don't necessarily recommend a DSLR. A video camera is much easier to film with.
Yeah, so why are you using a DSLR?
I like the creative control. I guess I'm a control freak. I like to have the ability to, from a producer's standpoint, change up the look and the overall feel of a situation. If the situation is real intense, and I've just missed a bull elk at 30 yards and I'm really kind of pissed off, I'm going to throw, a nice cinematic lens on there with good solid depth of field, and I'm going to talk to it. And it's amazing what that can do to a production just by changing up the overall look of a lens, or a shot. You crunch in that depth of field, or you open it up. It changes things completely. And so I've learned as a producer, that's my second passion outside of hunting, is producing, that if I can change some of those things, it really just adds to the dramatic effect. Yeah. Without having to do anything different, without having to create drama. All I'm doing is filming it a different way.
Now, one of the things I've always thought about filming hunts with a DSLR that's got to be so challenging is the fact that you are a little bit more limited with the fact that you might need to be changing lenses, or, you know, in some cases you'll have a deer at 10 yards and then you might have something at 120 yards, and unless you've got a mega zoom lens, you might need to be switching things out and changing things up. I mean, is that a huge hassle? Is that something you deal with?
Well, yeah. Of course, whether you're filming with a DSLR or you're filming with a video camera, your hunting habits have to change for you to be successful. If you're hunting the same way you would with a camera as you would without the camera, you're not gonna get into position to kill that deer on film. I promise you. I mean, if I'm elk hunting by myself, I'm as aggressive as it gets, and I'm chasing those elk down and getting into pockets, and you're going to the animals. Well, to self-film your hunt, that's pretty counterproductive. To self-film, it's a lot easier to set up an ambush situation and have the animals come to you, because you can control it. You can actually film it and have that animal unpressured and, you know, not aware that you're there, and have a lot better opportunity to take your hand off the camera, grab the bow, and shoot. So just by filming alone, your hunting strategy changes either way. With a DSLR, it's more hands-on. You know, you got both hands on there trying to focus and zoom and all that kind of junk, and it's an added challenge for sure.
Yeah. Now, are you usually running that your DSLR on a tripod, or I've seen you sometimes with what looks kind of like a souped-up selfie stick almost, with the DSLR close to you, and then looks like maybe a GoPro higher above that shooting down at you. What's that setup look like?
So the camera is always on a tripod, just with a fluid head, and then I've just kind of fashioned my own little. It's a broken shooting stick, is what it is, that I just slid over the top of on all the fluid heads or the tripod heads. They have the handle, you know.
Yep.
So I just cut off the rubber off the handle and slid this shooting stick over the back of that. That's about 2.5 feet long. And then I just attach my GoPro to the end of that. And it kind of gives a nice over-the-shoulder look. You can see the camera, and if you're lucky, you can see the elk or the deer or the animal with the GoPro. You know, but you can kind of see the action that's going on as a self-filmer.
Yeah. What about in your tree stand hunts? Are you rocking a camera arm or something like that too?
Yeah, always a camera arm. Yeah, stability's the key. So I use a muddy, or I'll use a third arm. Just depends on where I'm at. And then just a GoPro. That's the cool thing about being stationary. You know, if you're out of a tree stand or a ground blind, you can put GoPros wherever you want. I mean, I saw a picture with you. You must have had 7 or 8 GoPros wrapped around.
Yeah, that wasn't too functional of a setup, but.
I try to keep it simple. I've learned, you know, as a producer, there's an easy way and there's a hard way. And if you keep it easy and just fix everything in post, then and I personally end up with a better result than trying to run 3 or 4 cameras at a time.
Yeah. So what about that first-time self-filmer? I got to believe you get this question a lot, where someone's like, hey, what camera gear should I get started? Do you have a basic setup that you recommend, from camera to tripod to whatever else they need?
I do. I've been working on it for years, or less, actually. But there's a lot of inexpensive HD cameras out there. I think one's the Canon HV. I mean, I started out on the S20 or S21. Mm-hmm. I first started with solo on her, but there's like an HV40 or something that's a nice little $900 or $1,000 camera. Shoots great footage. You know, is perfectly capable of a television show quality as long as your lighting and audio is good. And you can go all the way up from there, you know. Remy and I both, for the last 2 years, have been shooting exclusively 4K footage, so that gives us a lot more flexibility in post. But again, it has its own set of challenges too.
Yeah, you get some big files then, huh?
Big files, yeah. Big files. But you know, that's the challenge with Solo Hunter is we could overproduce it and polish it up to the point to where it's not practical, not believable, or we can keep it raw and yet still try to have the best video quality we can.
Yeah. What do you think is the biggest mistake that most people make when trying to film a hunt, whether it's something you've done or something you've heard other people do? Is there anything common that a lot of people are screwing up?
they're not filming enough to tell a fully cohesive story, to show the story. You know, I mean, you can tell a story all you want, but if you can show that and what happened on camera, that's to me where most people, it's not, I wouldn't call it a mistake. It's just a challenge that they haven't figured out yet. You know, so say for instance, if I'm talking to the camera, I want to give myself 4, 5, 6 or more reference shots to reference what I just said, you know. And most guys are going to see an elk up on the ridge, film the elk, they're going to turn the camera, they're going to say, hey man, there's a big freaking elk up on the ridge, I'm going to go chase it down. And then they're going to go, and the next shot you see is them up on the ridge. Well, how did you get there? You know, what else did you see? What was the wind doing? You know, did you have your pack on or off? Just all those little things that don't matter to the hunt, but it matters to the post-production, matters to the end result as far as the video goes.
Mm-hmm. And those are typically the toughest shots to get because they require you take that extra time to, you know, go over these extra things. And when you really just want to be hunting, like we've been talking about, it takes a certain amount of like mental toughness or like dedication to actually get those extra shots that set up the scenes and different things like that.
You've got to know when to hunt and know when to produce, you know. And if you can do both, combine those together half decent, then you can end up with a TV show called Solo Hunter on Outdoor Channel. You know?
Now here's a question, Tim. How many animals' lives have been saved because of the fact that you've been trying to film?
A lot. You'll see this year there's quite the few. I'm actually cutting together right now episode 4 and 5, which is my Idaho elk hunt, and those 2 episodes combined, I passed on a lot of bulls because I was on some really unique elk and big bulls that I wanted, but I missed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times.
Ooh.
5 times, yeah. And it's just I have no excuse, man. No excuse.
This kind of takes us to a whole nother topic, but it's one that I think every hunter can relate to or will someday, whether they missed because in your situation, you know, trying to do a lot of different things and filming and everything or whatever else. How do you handle something like that mentally when you miss a deer or an elk or an animal? What's your kind of mental process for moving past that?
The first time you miss a trophy class animal, it'll tear you up. I mean, it'll eat you up. But then after you do it again, you'll realize it happens. You know, I just feel real bad for the guys that miss like a 200-inch whitetail, you know, or
yeah,
or hit them poorly and don't recover them and those that hurts a lot more. But when you're just a regular Joe Schmo hunter like me and you're not out there hunting for inches and it's only a 6x6, it's not a giant or whatever. You can't beat yourself up over it, but that's the other side of the coin too. I've been hunting since I was, forever, and I've been fortunate to have a lot of opportunities to both kill and to miss. So it's easier for me. I realize there's a lot of guys out there that shoot. I've never shot a Pope and young whitetail, whether it's because of where they live or where they've had the lack of opportunities of places to hunt, or new to hunting or whatever, but everybody's situation is completely different. So their initial reaction is going to be a little bit different, so you have to learn to control it in your way. I've missed enough times now and had enough frustrations that I just laugh and move on.
Yeah, it's kind of what you have to do at some point. Do you still get buck fever of any kind?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, honestly, the cameras kind of have alleviated that a lot because I have to put my mind on the camera. So that's helped with buck fever, but I still get it. I can't say that I got it last year ever. I think I was just, I don't know. But yeah. I mean, if you lose that excitement, you don't have a pulse.
Yeah, exactly. What situation or animal hits you the hardest in that way? What experience will get your blood flowing, the heart beating the fastest, make you lose your mind the most?
I think the animal that makes me lose my mind the most and that has given me the most buck fever in my hunting life is whitetail deer, And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that they're just different. Like, I don't know, they're just like hunting jackrabbits. You just don't know. Even if you got that buck on trail camera coming out of that corner of the cornfield into the soybeans or whatever the scenario might be, he never does it until like the ninth day in or whatever, or the third year in. And the next thing you know, you take a look to your left and there's that buck standing there, and you're like, that buck's not supposed to be standing there because he hasn't been for the last 6 years. And then they just have that ability of creeping up on you for me personally. And maybe that's because I've been around big mule deer and big elk more than big whitetails, but they just, I don't know. For some reason, like my adrenaline just gets pumping when I see a big whitetail, because you're not supposed to see a big whitetail.
Yeah,
they're supposed to be reclusive.
When they finally do show up, it's such a culmination of all that planning, all that time waiting. I think that might be part of it for me too, is that, while some might view it as a negative of whitetail hunting, the fact that there's a lot of sitting and waiting, I think all that anticipation kind of lends itself to that climactic moment being so intense when it actually does appear and it all goes the way you planned. There's a whole lot leading up to it that makes it kind of a crazy moment.
Well, put it this way, when I'm chasing a bull elk that I've found, a big bull like I found this year, I found a big bull. I could go up on 100,000 private acres of public land, and I could find that bull within a day or two. You could take a 180-inch whitetail or a 200-inch whitetail or a 130-inch mature buck for that matter, put him on a 6-acre farm, and you might not see him forever.
Yeah.
That's just the way whitetails are. And so to me, that's what's so intriguing about them is, and you don't know if a buck's going to travel 20 miles during the rut to your property from Mark Drury's property. You just don't know. So that's the cool thing about whitetail. But for big mule deer and elk, generally, if they're in the area, in the big country, you got a good chance of finding him.
Yeah. I think you probably have a much better chance of finding them than I do, because I'm still not quite at that point yet.
Yeah.
But
well,
I'm learning.
Set your expectations in the right place. I'm not an inch. I'm not an inch hunter. I don't really care if I see a deer and the siren goes off, then I'm chasing it. No matter what the score. But I know guys that'll sit and just analyze deer with the spot and scope and just count inches and everything, and they have their goals in mind, and that's great for them. But by the time they decide they're going to pass on that deer, that deer's already in the back of my truck.
Yeah. Pull the trigger. Is there any certain deer hunt, while we're kind of talking about whitetails again, is there any whitetail hunt that you've had that stands above all the rest that kind of sticks with you for some reason? Do you have any specific story that is your top deer story?
I've had a lot of really good experiences hunting whitetails. I've had one buck several years ago in Illinois. Probably it was the only time I've ever hunted with an outfitter, and it's probably be the last unless I'm chasing a mountain goat or a bighorn sheep or something. But there was a buck in there that came out under the tree stand that was 70 yards, 80 yards in front of me, over the top of a doe, and he had an 11-inch drop tine. And when they ended up killing him the week later, he scored 211 inches and just a beast of a buck. And here we have all this awesome video footage of this deer, SD video footage, which is too bad, but and everybody chasing it. So that was a good experience. Had another huge buck in Illinois. So those kind of stand out. But for me, for my whitetail experiences, my favorite thing in the world is going to Oklahoma and hanging out with my buddies at the lodge. We've got this place up in Northwest that my friend Stacy's put together, and we go out there and just hang out and have a good low key, low pressured time. And that to me, that's what whitetail hunting is for me. Elk hunting and mule deer hunting is a lot more serious, a lot more intense, and a lot more, a lot different. But for me, whitetails is just the relaxing mind game type of a hunt, hanging out with my buddies because I can.
Yeah, there's something to be said about that camaraderie aspect to a hunt that doesn't require you to be 13,000 feet up on a ridge versus being able to sit back at camp and grill something up and drink a beer and catch up.
I think a lot of people are like the idea of Western hunting and like the idea of spending time at over 10,000 feet and all that. But at the end of the day, the reality is it's difficult, it's tough, and it's brutal. And there are times that it's not fun, but there's something that drives you to do it, and I think everybody should experience it once or twice. But that's where, different strokes for different folks, they say.
Yeah. Yeah, I 100% agree. That's something that, since I've started heading out west to hunt, I've been coming back and telling all my whitetail buddies, hey, you really should try it at least once. Just experience that, because, like you said, it's so different in so many different ways. And while it can be incredibly challenging in a lot of ways and tough, and it's not always hunky-dory fun, I think there's a powerful set of experiences that you can only get on that type of thing, that type of hunt, that, like you said, different strokes for different folks. But if you ever thought about it, I would highly recommend trying it.
Yeah, if you're an adventurous guy, go after the adventure. Don't just limit yourself to, and if you have the ability to, don't limit yourself to just one thing because it looks hard. It's not. You're hunting for a reason. There's no guarantee that you're going to see a trophy buck, let alone kill one. You got to be prepared to eat some tag soup and go home empty-handed. You're going out there for the adventure. You're not going out there to fill the freezer.
Yeah, 100%. I've definitely had to adopt that mindset because 3 out of 4 times I've eaten my tag, or 2 out of 3 or something like that now. So
out west, the archer's success is well under 10%.
Right. Yeah, I don't know if I want to keep going out here because right now I'm above average, but if I keep moving out, I might go downhill.
Yeah, I think that's because there are so many of us hunters that are at different skill levels or different levels in their lives or their careers or their desires, and that's the beautiful thing about it is hunting is such an individual relationship with you and God and nature that you have to get out of it what you want out of it and what you're willing to put into it, because you can't look at what somebody else is getting and expect to get that same result unless you're putting in the same effort as that person.
Yeah, and I think that's one of it's interesting you bring that up. I mean, that's one of there's a lot of great things about the media, the hunting media, what you do, what I do, what all these other guys sharing our experiences or lessons learned and things. There's a lot of great things we can do, but I think one of the unfortunate kind of side effects of that is that you do get a lot of people watching or reading or listening and, like you just said, they assume that they should be able to get the same results or see the same thing or have the same experience, but there's a lot of different variables. There's a lot of different factors that go into whether or not you will have that experience, if you can have that experience. And unfortunately, I think that affects expectations a lot.
You're only seeing, you don't post when you have a bad day. you're only seeing what people want you to see. There's a lot of unrealistic expectations out there because of social media. I'm a huge fan of what it does and what it can do for a person and for their career and what it's done for mine. But at the same token, I'm a huge proponent that social media is bad for the industry too. Everything against hunters, the avenue's there because of social media, and it creates this opportunity for people to not show hunting how it needs to be shown, and what it means to me. It's something different for everyone, but social media is going to ruin hunting. It's been a great thing for it and for the brands and the businesses that can grow and experience growth because of it. But at the end of the day, it's my prediction that social media is what's going to cause division between hunters and peoples and different things, because it's not a true and clear picture of what reality is. It's a true and clear picture of what Mark Kenyon and Tim Burnett want people to assume the reality of their lives are.
Yeah, there's a lot of things about the implications of social media that are concerning, whether it be within the hunting world, like you just said, that kind of thing, like creating false expectations or stuff like that, or on the other side, like the types of issues we've had here where non-hunters catch wind of a photo or something that someone posted on social media that maybe is in bad taste, or when you don't know the context of it, it seems really concerning to people on the other side of the aisle or whatever, and then you see that kind of stuff blow up into this huge anti-hunting media storm, and there's a lot of that stuff that concerns me, that's for sure.
There's a lot of people that are a lot bigger than me in the industry that are just out there looking for a fight. And they need to just not be looking for a fight, because a lot of people, I think that because someone makes, some anti-hunter posts on, makes a comment on their post that it's a badge of honor. No, you just stirred up a fight that didn't need to be there, I don't understand the constant need for attention that social media has driven people to. If I didn't have to do it, for my business and for my career, I probably wouldn't. I enjoy it. I enjoy the interaction with people and with the partners that I work with, but it goes against my personality, and but it's here. We have to just do our best to represent ourselves and the sport of hunting in the right way, and if that means sending a private message to a teenager that's posted a distasteful photo and things, and just giving them your opinion and hoping that they respect that, then that's what that means, because it's our place to teach the younger people coming up into this industry some of the ropes that we've learned over the years. Yeah. There's a lot of stuff on there that, man, it just makes me cringe, and I've voiced my opinion on things like a bear being killed with a spear and different things, and had my butt kicked for that, but there's things that you don't believe in, and if we don't say anything, who will?
Yeah, I 100% agree with you, and I think there's a lot of people, there's a lot of this, there's it's hard to know what's what anymore these days, because there's a lot of people that say you should not be criticizing or raising concerns about other hunters because you are trying to, divide hunters. We shouldn't be dividing each other. We should be supporting each other 100% in every way, because there's so many other people outside of the hunting community that are attacking us anyways. But on the other hand, to your point, if we don't police our own in a respectful, considerate way, we're also opening ourselves up to a lot of other issues. I think when there's someone poking holes in the boat, I'm not going to let the boat flood. I think you need to plug that if you can, and try to fix it in a proper way. And if that means, like you said, sending someone a note and saying, hey, what you're doing there isn't really helping the cause. I think that's great advice, not only for somebody in the hunting industry, but for every hunter out there. If any of us see something out there, take the time to talk to your fellow hunter, your friend, or whoever, and maybe they didn't think about how other people might perceive this post or that photograph or what you said in that video,
Yeah, the reality of it is that guy's decision to post the way he did affects my life and my career, because if it has a negative and adverse effect of how hunting is perceived by even people within our sport, that affects our sport, and that affects me. It's a selfish thing a lot of times, a lot of these posts that we do and different things. But we have to sit back and realize we're not just affecting our lives or what people think of us. It's affecting me. It's affecting those of us that look at it as a lifestyle and a career.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and probably people listening are thinking, man, here goes Mark again talking about this topic, because I talk about it a lot.
This topic a lot before.
But I just think it's so important. I just think that, in today's world where we hunters are, like less than 5% of the population in America, we are at the mercy of the non-hunting general public. Unfortunately, it's a privilege that we're able to go out there and hunt and fish and do these different things. And if the perception of everyone on the outside is that we are not doing things the right way, or that what we do doesn't seem to be acceptable by their standards, we're going to lose that privilege, whether we like that fact or not. It's just kind of a reality. So I just think it's very important that we're careful about how we're perceived and how we represent ourselves. And I guess I'll probably keep preaching it till the day this show goes down the tube.
Well, that's the thing is, at the end of the day, all this could go away tomorrow, and in all likelihood, it probably will someday, it's we just it's up to us to continue to fight the fight and doing the right things so that we can ensure that it doesn't, Yeah. But who knows?
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to try to pivot off of my steeple post here, whatever I am up on the. My last thing I was kind of curious for you, Tim, was what's next for you? Like, what's your next bucket list hunt? What haven't you done that you really still want to do?
I'd like to draw a sheep tag. I'd like to draw a mountain goat tag. That'd be nice to do before I get older and fatter. I'm not one that wants to take away from my kids' college fund to go and splurge on a sheep hunt. I'm just not going to do that. It's not that important to me. So I'm just going to keep putting in for hunts and doing what I can. I went on a Barbary sheep hunt this year for the first time. I'll probably go to New Zealand again. I'm hoping to get to Australia, but there's so many do-it-yourself opportunities with some great people all across the country, all across the world, that there's a great community and opportunities a guy can go and hunt and experience different things without having to break the bank. I mean, that's one thing that I've really prided myself on, is that I'm not spending any more on a hunt than Mark Kenyon would on that same hunt. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm doing more of those because of the career that I have, but I'm not out there booking hunts with outfitters and doing high dollar hunts because I want to up my badassery factor. I'm doing hunts that I would be doing as, a middle-aged father would do anyway. So those are the things that I enjoy, and that's what I'll continue to do. But hopefully I can expand on that a little bit.
That's awesome. So what about for the show? Where do you want to take things next? What's in the future?
I like the direction Solo Hunter has been, last several years. I think we'll continue down that road, obviously trying to do better at hunting and better at filming. Last year I did a project with Prime and G5, hosting a show for them that we did on Sportsman Channel in Pursuit, and a little mini series. Hopefully we'll be able to continue to do some of that because, I have a lot of passions in life. Hunting is one of them, but there's a lot of other things too. If I can break 70 on my golf game this summer, I'll be stuck. So, that's hunting is part of my life. It's not all of my life, and I'm grateful to have it. But there's a lot of things that I'd like to continue to do as a goal-oriented person, not just a hunter.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to see the progression and see how things continue to grow, and I'm loving what you've been doing so far. So for people that want to either discover what you've been doing with Solo Hunter or get more of it, where can they find stuff online?
So the website is probably the central location for everything as far as video and social media links, and that's solohunter.com. So there's two different website, URLs a person can type in. It's SOLOHNTR.com, or they can type in the Solo Hunter, all spelled out.com, or just Google Solo Hunter and I command it. I mean, you'll not be able to not find it.
Perfect. Well, that's easy enough. I'll make sure to put links in this blog post for anyone that wants to check out the website. And you're across most social media platforms too, right?
Yeah. So Instagram is kind of where all social media starts with me, and then it kind of feeds into Facebook, and Twitter just gets whatever's left over. It's like I say, social media is there to have the connection with those that like what we do, and so we'll continue to do that. And then YouTube is really also another kind of focus, just trying to get more videos out, more so than just the episodes that we have, trying to expand that. But anytime you add another project, it's that much more time, that much more work, and it's got to make sense at the end of the day. I'm not in this to have the most eyeballs on Tim Burnett and to show how big of a stud Tim Burnett is. I'm in this, as a lifestyle and as a passion, as well as a business.
Yeah, I think it's pretty awesome. Now, I think I know you have some of your episodes, and I'm not sure if you have all. Do you have all of your episodes available online through VHX, or just a certain number of them?
Yeah, so VHX only has 2 seasons, the last 2 seasons, season 5 and season 6. Okay. No. It only had season 6 on there. That's right. YouTube has the last 3 seasons of episodes, with an exception of it's kind of confused, the last 6 of this last fall. So when you're on the networks, you're under contractual obligation not to release any episodes until a certain time frame because of their dealings with the network providers. So if you go on YouTube, we're up to, I think, episode 8 of last season. So season 6, episode 8 is up there, and I'll be uploading episode 9 here in another week or so.
Nice. Well, definitely good stuff to check out. And what about the new season? When's that premiering? When should we be looking for that?
The premiere is on Outdoor Channel June 28th. So the show is on every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday mornings at 9:30 a.m. I think the network must have a vendetta out against me because they took away my evening time slots and gave me all mornings. So
bummer.
Yeah, well, that's all right. We'll show them. We'll crush the ratings again, and you know, people will find the show if they like it. They're gonna find it no matter when it airs. But you know, I'm not a greasy wheel, and I'm not one of the favorites, so I don't get the awesome time slots. But hey, viewership is changing. You know, you'll see a lot more digital stuff going on.
Yeah, and I think from everything I've seen, I think you're positioning yourself very well for the digital, the move to digital that's happening more and more. That people find the stuff they like and they enjoy, and from everything I've seen and heard, I think a lot of people are enjoying what you're putting out there. So I think the digital stuff will continue to do well.
I don't think people realize I've been on YouTube for almost 10 years now. So that's really, you know, digital has been the only constant since then, pretty much.
Yeah, well, great stuff. Well, Tim, this has been fun. I really enjoyed this. I think I learned a few things that will help me this fall, which I appreciate, and I think a lot of our listeners have too. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Let's definitely stay in touch, and hopefully we'll have some good stories to tell this season.
Yeah, that sounds great. Good luck on your hunt.
Thank you. You too. All right, so there you go. Before we shut it down, though, we do need to thank our partners who help make this podcast possible. So big thanks to Sitka Gear, Trophy Ridge, Bear Archery, Redneck Blinds, Huntero Maps, Ozonics, Carbon Express, Maven Optics, and the Whitetail Institute of North America. And finally, thank you all for tuning in today. I hope you enjoyed this one and maybe got the bug to head out on an adventure of your own. So until next time, thanks again and stay wired to hunt.
I'm sure a lot of you guys remember the old ceremonial hunting tradition of eating the heart out of the first animal you kill. Meat from those organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. You can get those same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil. Find out more at heartandsoil.co. And remember, use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase.
Outdoor adventure won't wait for engine problems. Things like hard starts, rough performance, and lost fuel economy are often caused by fuel gum and varnish buildup. Seafoam can help your engine run better and last longer. You simply pour a can into your gas tank. Hunters and anglers rely on Seafoam to keep their engines running the way it should the entire season. So pick up a can of Seafoam today at your local auto parts store or visit seafoamworks.com to learn more.